Hey guys, welcome back to the NFL Addict. Today we're going to be recapping everything that happened on, I guess it was just Sunday this week, of Week 17 of the NFL season. Normally I go over Saturday too, but there was no Saturday games this week. So since this is the final week of the season, I'm actually going to do it a tiny bit differently. So normally what I do, just go through all the games and talk about them. That's what I am going to do, but seeing as it's the last week and a lot of playoff scenarios were in play, I'm going to start off with all the games that had no playoff implications, and by that I mean teams getting in or out. I don't mean, for the NFC there was a big battle on who's going to get the first seed. I'm not going to, include that in the playoff contention thing. So I'm just going to, go through all the games that had nothing to do on whether teams get in or out. So starting off, we had the Vikings went up against the Lions. It was a very, very, very good game. The Lions are coming off of that horrible, terrible loss last week, and they actually managed to play pretty well offensively in this one. From 7 points last week to 35 points in this one. But then again, that was going up against that Vikings defense that has been very poor. However, they did get beat 37-35 by the Vikings. That Lions defense is also, not very good. If you're wondering what's going on behind me, I forgot to mention, I'm actually painting my room. So it's either going to be like this just for this video and the video I'm making a few minutes after I finish recording this one, or it's going to be like this for all week. So that's why my background looks so terrible. I'm painting it blue and then I hang everything back up. That's also the reason why I'm in a different kind of angle. It's because bunch of stuff. I know you can't see it. There's a bunch of stuff down there, and there's a bunch of stuff over there. This is about the only place I could sit. But moving on, we have the Jets against the Patriots. The Jets were looking to improve the 3-13. Oh, I forgot to mention Vikings in the season at 7-9. Lions in the season at 5-11. Okay, now we get to the next one. Jets, Patriots. The Patriots actually went up and put on a pretty good showing at 28-14. Cam Newton prior to this game had only thrown 5 touchdowns. He had started every game. Oh, he was injured for a couple, but he had started most of the games. I think like 13 games out of the 15. And he'd only thrown 5. In this game, he goes in there, and he almost doubles it. He threw for 3 touchdowns, and it was a really good performance by Cam Newton, definitely fighting to get a starting job back next year. If not with the Patriots, then for some other team. And then you have the Jets, who nothing to play for. They actually went out there and played pretty well. It was tied up at the end of the third quarter. The Patriots scored 14 points and win 28-14. 14 points in the fourth quarter, sorry. But the Patriots win 28-14. The Jets fall to 2-14 at the end of their season. The Patriots rise to 7-9. It was a pretty good game by the Patriots. The Jets, a pretty bad game. Their offense, I guess, played pretty well. I mean, I don't know. The Jets are pretty bad. Next up, Falcons went up against the Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers got another blowout win here, 44-27. I think they're really looking forward to the playoffs. They play Washington. Pretend I didn't say Washington. Pretend I said the NFC East champion, because I don't want to ruin anything. If you don't watch any football on Sunday, I want this to be like suspense, like who made it. It's not though. Anyways, the Buccaneers had a really good offensive performance. They won 44-27. It was actually a pretty close game heading in the fourth quarter. They outscored them 21-7 though. They kind of put that behind them. The Bucs offense definitely looks elite. They are getting hot at the right time. I mean, before we had seen, in weeks prior to these past 2 weeks that they were not playing too well offensively. They were having pretty bad games. These past 2 weeks, that has not been the case. They've gone up against admittedly lesser teams, but they have played really well offensively. Their defense also didn't play too badly, but that Falcons offense has kind of been their weakness. Their defense was supposed to be really good. And I mean, talking about the Falcons, their defense underperformed. Like I said, their defense was supposed to be the best part of their team. And I mean, it has been this whole season, but it did not look that way this week. I think my camera's a bit too high, but whatever. Never mind. Let's just move on to the next one. Another really good game. This one actually went to it was almost in overtime. Raiders, Broncos. The Raiders actually pulled out. The Falcons went 4-12, and the Buccaneers went 11-5. By the way, the Falcons going 4-12 is just a bit harsh. I mean, come on. So many close games. They should be, 7-9, 8-8, something like that. Next up, Raiders, Broncos. Now we can go. The Raiders get a nice win here, 32-31. I'm going to start saying the records before I actually talk about the games. The Raiders rise to 8-18 in their season. The Broncos fall to 5-11. It was a really good game by both offenses. I mean, the Raiders definitely bounced back pretty hard. They scored 32 points. They looked pretty good offensively. However, their defense did allow that Drew Lock-led offense to score 31 points. It was going to go into overtime. It was 24-24. Broncos scored a touchdown. Raiders score a touchdown, and they go for 2, and that's what pushed them ahead. I gotta say, I'm a pretty big fan of John Gruden just because of how many risks he takes. And I know right now they're 8-8, so it might not seem like it pays off. But really, I mean, I kind of admire the way that he just goes for it. except for last game. That's what really confuses me. Last week, whenever they're up against the Dolphins, they had a chance to slam it in for a touchdown. They kneel and kick a field goal. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyways, moving on, we have the Chargers and the Chiefs. I think this is the first game the Buccaneers. I was about to say this is the first game with a team that's going to be in the playoffs, but the Buccaneers-Falcons game, of course, had the Buccaneers. So the Chiefs, they were resting like half of their starters. They had already clinched the first round bye. There was absolutely nothing at all for them to be playing for, so they just rested everybody, and they lost 38-21. The Chargers, I just heard the news that Anthony Lynn got fired, the Chargers head coach. Before that, I was going to say that Anthony Lynn was fighting for his job, but apparently that didn't happen. He got fired after 4 years, and I don't understand it, because while yes, they did, go 7-9. By the way, Chargers bump up to 7-9. The Chiefs bump down to 14-2. So while the Chargers, they didn't do too well, but you look at these past seasons, what he's done with this lackluster team, he's done pretty well. And he had an absolutely horrendous, middle of the season. But you look at earlier in the season, how close they were staying in games that they really should have lost. And at the end of the season, they ended the season on a 4-game winning streak. If I was in charge of that Chargers organization, I would have kept them around for another year. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this if anyone actually watches it, but I would have kept them around. But yeah, the Chiefs rested a lot of people, and you can say that's why they won by 17, but still. Their defense wasn't actually very good. I mean, like I said, the Chiefs are resting a lot of people, and they still let up 21 points. Next up, Seahawks versus the 49ers. The Seahawks had a nice win here, 26-23. It's crazy to see how, despite all the injuries to the 49ers, anytime there is an NFC West matchup, a divisional game within the NFC West, it always seems to be a really good game. If you don't know what I'm looking at my notes that I have here. But yeah, the 49ers, they lost. C.J. Beathard, though, actually had a pretty good game. He definitely, he looked really good. I think that it wouldn't be too crazy to see a team sign him as a backup and then maybe see him work his way onto a squad. I don't think his career is completely over. However, they did get the loss here. The Seahawks get a win, and they bump up to 12-4. Meanwhile, the 49ers get a loss. They drop down to 6-10 to end the season. The last game we're going to talk about that had no playoff implications, as in teams moving in, we had the Saints-Panthers. Saints absolutely dominated 33-7. They played an amazing game on both sides of the ball, and they managed to bump up to 12-4. The Panthers dropped down to 5-11. Panthers were horrendous on both sides of the ball. They were just terrible. They threw 5 total interceptions. Now, Teddy Bridgewater was taken out, I think. I don't know. He had some kind of injury with his leg. I don't know. He threw 2 interceptions. Their backup PJ Walker threw 3 interceptions, and the Panthers lost 33-7. Now, I'm not going to go, we're going to get into playoff stuff here, but I'm not going to completely go over all the scenarios, because if you care about the scenarios, 1, there are other videos going over it. 2, you've probably already heard about it. 3, if you haven't heard about it, then you probably don't really care. I don't want anyone having to sit here and listen to a 5-minute long thing talking about it. Basically, there were 2 spots with 3 teams. The Rams, Cardinals, and Bears are all vying for a spot. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. So, the Bears-Packers game was the first that I'm going to talk about. The Bears, if they win this game, they're in. They lost 35-16. They dropped down to 8-8. Meanwhile, the Packers bumped up to 13-3. But it's not over for them. I'm going to talk about that in a second when we get to the next game. But let's go ahead and talk about this game specifically. Aaron Rodgers looked like an MVP out there. People are talking about how all the MVP candidates are making their last push, and he did a really, really good one. That was one of his best games of the season, and he looked spectacular. So, great game by the Packers. The Bears, though, not a good way to end your season. They were on a, what were they? 3-game winning streak, and they were looking really good on offensively, and they go out there against a Packers team that, while it's been really, really good, that's mainly been its offense, their defense has not been their specialty. So I thought this was a chance for maybe the Bears to keep it close and show that, hey, they're up there. I thought that if the Bears are able to keep it within 4, or if they were to win, I thought that there was a chance they maybe could do something in the playoffs, as in win, maybe 1 or 2 games. But this just kind of destroyed all that. Now, for the Bears to make it in, they would have to have the Rams to lose. So it was a Rams-Cardinals game. So if in this game, with the Bears losing, if the Cardinals win, they're in, and no matter what, the Rams are in. So the Rams, Jared Goff wasn't in this game. Cooper Kupp wasn't in this game. Kyler Murray got injured for the Cardinals too. So these were two offenses that were without their starting quarterbacks, and it was a pretty low-scoring game. The Rams got the win, 18-7. The Cardinals dropped down to 8-8, and they are no longer in the playoffs. So I told you there were two spots with the Bears, Rams, and Cardinals fighting for them. The Bears and the Rams got in. Both offenses were pretty bad, obviously, in that game. Because they were pretty injured, but also, both defenses are really good. Surprisingly, the Cardinals defense actually played a lot better than I would have expected. They only allowed 18 points, so that's that. The Bears sneak in at 7th seed, and the Rams are stuck at 6th. Next up, we're going to be talking about the NFC East thing, because at the beginning of this week, there was one spot in the NFC East champion, and the Cowboys, Giants, and Washington were all in. I don't know why I did 3 like that. And Washington were all in position to win this one. So starting off with the Cowboys-Giants game, it was actually a pretty good one. The Giants looked like they may run away with it at halftime. It was 20-9, and it looked like they were going to come back. Nope, it was the Cowboys looked like towards the end of the game that they were going to come back. But the Giants hung on to win 23-19, and they eliminated the Cowboys from contention. The Cowboys fall to 6-10. The Giants rise to 6-10. And at this point, after this game, there was a chance we would see a 6-10 Giants team in the playoffs. The Giants played great on both sides of the ball. In my opinion, I feel like they're the best team in the NFC East. Okay, I'm going to talk about who won it, but no matter what, I do think that they deserve to make it in with how they've played towards the end of this season. The Cowboys' defense actually played pretty well, holding them in 13 points, but their offense didn't play too well. Next up, we have the Washington Eagles game. So, like I said, I'm about to say, I guess, since the Giants won the game against the Cowboys, if Washington wins this game, Washington's in, the Giants are eliminated. If Washington was to lose this game, the Giants were in. So it was a pretty important game. It was on Sunday Night Football. Everyone was on the edge of their seats. It was a pretty good game, and Washington gets the win 20-14 to bump up to 7-9. Meanwhile, the Eagles drop down to 4-11-1. The Eagles are terrible. Let's just be honest here. Even with Hurts, the only thing that were getting done was Jalen Hurts moving the ball. Now, that was against that Washington defense. That Washington defense was really, really good. They had 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery. They played really good. I think they had a bunch of 3-and-outs. They had they got a stop on a goal-to-go situation. There was a first and goal, and they held them. They went for it on 4th and goal, and they didn't get it. So that Washington defense played one of its best games all season. The same can't be said for that Washington offense. It did not look good out there. It was really helped out by that defense. Towards the beginning of this game, first quarter, that first drive looked phenomenal. That looked amazing. If Washington had played like they played in the first quarter all game, it would have been a blowout. It would have been, a 30-plus to 14-point win for Washington, but it didn't. It was 17-14.5, and Washington only managed to put up 3 points in the second half. The Eagles might have actually won if they hadn't benched Jalen Hurts. That was the thing people were getting mad about, is the fact that at the beginning of the fourth quarter, Jalen Hurts was benched for Nate Sudfeld. But I've been talking about this game for way too long. Let's move on to the last playoff scenario. I don't know if you can see, we have quite a lot of games to talk about for this one. So basically, in the AFC, you had 5 teams vying for 4 spots. Kinda. We really had 4 teams vying for 3 spots, and then there was the AFC South Championship. It was a bunch of crazy stuff. But basically, there were 5 teams, and one of them was not going to make the playoffs. So let's go ahead and get started. It was the Dolphins, Ravens, Browns, Colts, and Titans, and one of them was not going to make it. So starting off, the Dolphins went up against the Bills, and it was a 56-26 blowout in the Bills' favor. They jump up to 13-3. The Dolphins drop down to 10-6. So what this means is the Dolphins need one of the other teams I just mentioned to lose, except for the Titans. They need either the They need either the Ravens, the Browns, or the Colts to lose, and they're still in. But they did get a terrible loss. Tua looked terrible. I think if I think if Fitzpatrick didn't have COVID, I think he would have gone in. I think that they would have put him in the fourth quarter or something. I think they would have had a better chance to win because Tua looked pretty bad. And their defense, obviously, they lit up 56 points. Looked horrendous, terrible, disgusting. Moving on to the next game, the Ravens and the Bengals. If the Ravens win, they're in. So the Ravens, they went in this game. They knew they had to win, and they did. 38-3. It was a blowout. The Ravens bump up to 11-5 and clinch playoffs. Meanwhile, the Bengals dropped down to 4-11-1. So after this game, we still don't know. Are the Dolphins in or are they not? Let's go ahead and talk about this game though. The Ravens, they're getting hot at the right time. I think at one point they were 7-5 or something. I don't know, but they weren't looking too good. These past 3 weeks, they have looked like one of the best teams. Last 4 weeks, they have looked insane, especially offensively. Their offense was struggling like in the midseason. They completely changed that around. They've gone hot at the right time, and what I mean by that is that they're going into the playoffs playing probably the best football they've played all year. So that means that they are ready to keep on improving, and they are ready to set fire to this whole AFC. Meanwhile, the Bengals, only 3 points. Their offense was terrible. Their offense actually kind of stepped it up these past 2 weeks. They're on a 2-game winning streak. Their offense was a big part of that, and they only put up 3 points. So yeah, Ravens, really great game all around. The Bengals, so disappointing. So yeah, next up, Steelers against the Browns. If the Browns win, they're in. The Steelers were, I don't know if it was only Ben Roethlisberger, if it was more people, but they were resting some of their starters, and it was a pretty close game, probably because of that. And the Browns ended up getting a win here, 24-22. The Browns bump up to 11-5. The Steelers drop down to 12-4. Sorry, I don't know if it's weird when I look at my notes, but I mean I have to. I can't memorize all this. The Browns played amazing both sides of the ball. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it was the Steelers practice squad or whatever," but I don't think they actually benched that many people because it was a pretty important game. They were playing for second position in the AFC, and they were also, I guess they weren't playing for the AFC North anymore. They clinched that last week. But still, they were playing for something. They didn't have, they were looking for that second seed. But yeah, they're going to actually have a rematch of this game. The Browns-Steelers is going to be playing in the playoffs. This is a wild card matchup, but we're going to see a doubleheader here. But yeah, the Steelers actually played pretty good with all the guys that they were missing. And yeah, next up, the Jaguars, Colts. The Dolphins at this point are sweating because now they need the Colts to lose to make it in. So if the Colts won this game, I'm going to keep it, a little dramatic. I know you probably already know if you're watching this video, but if the Colts won this game, the Dolphins don't make it. And drumroll, please. No, I'm not that stupid. The Colts win 28-14 over the Jaguars. I don't think anyone had any doubt about that. The Colts jump up to 11-5 and clinch playoffs. The Jaguars drop down to 1-15, and they. But since the Colts won, the Dolphins not in the playoffs. So disappointing, man. They were so good. They started out 3-3. They end the season at 7-3, I'm pretty sure. And they looked like a really, really good football team. Not good enough, though. They have a pretty good draft spot because they traded with the Texans. So they actually have the 3rd overall pick. So they went 10-6 this season. They have the 3rd overall pick. The Dolphins are looking dangerous because they're going to get a top 3 player, or they're going to trade it and get a lot of good players. So the Dolphins, they may not have made it this season, but they're looking pretty good for next one. But yeah, the Jaguars actually played pretty good. They gave them a run for their money. The Colts are great on both sides. It was a really good game by both of these teams. I know the score won't show it, but it was actually a pretty close game. I think at one point it was 14-20. So yeah. Next up, the final game we're going to talk about. Normally I talk about Sunday Night Football last, but because of this little situation I've created for myself, we're talking about Titans-Texans last. So why this is important is because since the Colts won, if the Titans were to be beaten by the Texans in this one, then the Colts would take the AFC South title. I know it's really, really confusing, and it's kind of confusing for me too. That's why I keep stumbling through my words. But yeah, so in the end, the Titans got the win 41-38 in an insanely high-scoring game where both offenses played really well, but both defenses played terribly, especially the Titans. That Titans defense really, really underperformed in my opinion. The Texans defense let up 37 points to the Bengals last week, so I'm not really completely surprised that they let up 41 points, but still, scoring 38 was pretty good for the Texans, and the Texans, with this loss, drop down to 4-12. Meanwhile, the Titans jump up to 11-5 and are now in the AFC South Championship. Yeah. Or they got the championship, sorry. But yeah, I don't know if y'all can tell this, but normally when I do my videos, I just throw my my notebook onto my bed. At this point, my bed is way over there. I'm still gonna do it though, so yeah. Probably just ripped 15 pages, but whatever. Thank you so much for watching this whole video. We post NFL content here every single day, and yes, even when it gets into the off season, we still will be posting, or I still will be posting every single day. We'll be doing this thing called the NFL Beans, or you can look back on my channel, I did that before, and I'm just gonna talk about the news that happened that day and the day before that. And so it's a quickly, 5-minute news show, so please subscribe here. We do predictions, power rankings, all that kind of stuff. We are still gonna do predictions for the the playoffs. We're going to do power rankings. We're going to do a Super Bowl thing. By that I mean prediction show. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you in my next video, which should be, seeing as there's no Monday Night Football, I'm actually going to look back at my predictions I made before the season, and I'm going to see how accurate they ended up being. So that should be pretty interesting, so please stick around. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video.